Today we're talking through eBay's authenticity guarantee program once again, and how there's a bit of conjecture in the hobby right now with regards to how the program actually works. And I just want to clarify a few things and talk them all through with you now. Now, if you're not aware what this program is, this was implemented by eBay around 6 to 7 months ago. I want to say I touched on it many times, as you can see on the screen right now. And at the time I said this was a really, really good thing for the hobby because it looked like it was going to protect buyers. Now, to give you some context, this program works that when an individual card sells for over a certain threshold, it has to go through eBay's authenticity guarantee. So the way it works is if it sells over that threshold, it gets mailed to eBay instead of the seller sending it directly to the buyer. It goes to eBay, they do their checks, their guarantees, and then they send it to the respective buyer. If it fails the authenticity check, it goes back to the individual seller. Now, to give some context, if the card is raw, it goes through CGC and CSG for the review, depending on whether it's sports card or non-trading, or a non-sports card, I should say. And then if it is graded, it goes to PSA. Now, I also believe this goes to not just PSA slabs. I think PSA also then need to do an authentication check over, non-PSA slabs. So on face value, this sounds pretty good, right? And I touched on that in those two videos that I popped up on the screen. At least I think it was two videos where, they gave the buyer some added protection when buying cards. Now, this was initially free when implemented. It's now, I believe, a fee applied to it. But I still think it's good. This is despite issues having been, popping up every now and then with regards to the program itself. Firstly, you had, cards coming out of the one touches or the card savers that were sending them in, cards being rejected that weren't actually meant to have issues because they were pack pulled cards by individuals, all these sorts of things. There's obviously lots of kinks within this process. But the one thing I want to talk through with you all today is this information that has been shared by Cardporn. Now, essentially, they've done a post where you've got people that are, this seller in particular, intentionally selling fake slabs on eBay. And because this would typically qualify for the authenticity guarantee, the way they've got around it is by selling the fake slab in a lot with real slabs. Because what this means is that if the card is in a lot, it doesn't go through the program. It's only for single cards. Now, this has been known from the very start of the implementation of this program, and it's obviously a poor thing, and it's a poor loophole within the program, but it's never been something that the program pretended it could do, right? So when Cardporn themselves say something along the lines of, as it turns out, like implying that it's a shock that this person's getting around the program this way. Okay, firstly, that's not what the program does, right? But this is just something you need to be aware of when you're buying on eBay, because firstly, eBay will tell you whether it's going through the program or not, but this is just something you need to keep in the back of your mind, right? You're not necessarily safe when you're seeing people on eBay selling lots and selling individual cards that do go through the program and then list a lot thinking, okay, this seller is opting in for this program. They've probably got the right thing in mind by me. They don't, because they're getting around it by selling a lot because they don't go through the program. Now, a lot of people are hating on the eBay program because of this fact, but my message to you is like, why is that the case? So help me understand why you're hating on eBay, because it's a really hard thing to try and have triggered for lots, right? Because how do you know if the individual card goes over the certain threshold, all these sorts of things? Like, would the option then just give it to the buyer, let the buyer opt in whether they want the package or the set of cards to go through the program? In my opinion, that's probably the best way to go, irrespective of whether it's a lot or not. I think that's something that eBay should look to implement, right? And I know you could end up having lots of cards in the hundreds, if not thousands, but my suggestion would be eBay should continue to make it mandatory from an individual card perspective, right? Because I think it's a really big thing. And I know there's issues with the program, like I touched on at the very start, cards slipping through the cracks. But, I think in the grand scheme of things, this is going to benefit more people than it impacts. I know lots of people have been complaining about the fact they've had sales rejected because the card didn't meet the criteria, even though it should have, all these sorts of things. I just think in the grand scheme of things, this is a really good thing for the hobby because it just gives you added protection. Like I've touched on many times on this channel, there are so many people now on eBay, and this has always been around, but it's just amplified now because there's so much more money in the hobby. The people are trying to scam individuals, so on and so forth. Anything that we can have that can try and mitigate those risks is a good thing in my book. And yes, there are kinks, like I said, I feel like I've explained that already. That's still okay. It still needs to be there in my opinion, because there's so many douchebags and scumbags out there that are looking to rip you off. So from my perspective, eBay will say, well, not from my perspective, eBay will say that, okay, how do you expect us to differentiate between a lot that has 1,000 cards in it, as an example, that sells over the threshold, or a lot that only has 3 cards in it? My recommendation would be somehow give the buyer the option for lots to send it into the eBay authenticity guarantee. Maybe it's a checkbox or something they can, click through when they're going to pay for the card itself. Because I think you need to put the onus on the buyer when it comes to lots, because it's really hard for eBay to make this an automated and standardized approach on the seller's perspective, because not every lot can go through this program. It just doesn't make sense. So I think put the onus on the buyer. If the buyer wants to pay an extra $5, $10, $15, $20 or whatever it is, whatever the flat fee is, for the buyer to feel comfortable, let them check that as they're checking out for the item itself, because I think that's the way you can sort of solve this moving forward. Like when you have cards like this, where sellers, like I just showed you on screen, intentionally trying to sell fake slabs, that card porn I've confirmed within that post, and I'll put the link down below so you can, check out the details yourself. The sellers are the ones that are trying to take advantage. So give the power to the buyer to get the comfort they need, okay? Let them check on the checkout process. Let them pay the fee when it comes to lots or even single cards, right? Because I know a lot of buyers are saying, I don't want to have to pay for this service. Or sellers, I should say, if the buyer wants it, let them pay for it, because they're the ones that are going to be at risk if the card comes back fake, right? So let them mitigate that risk as so they do, please, right? And I know I've just rambled quite a lot there, but you guys, I know I say this a lot, you guys get what I'm trying to say. So I'm keen to get your thoughts on this down in the comments below. There's been a lot of hate, like I said, off the back of that, where people have been complaining about the program out at eBay. And yes, there are lots of issues like I've touched on, but I think this is a really, really good thing for the hobby long term, because scammers are more and more prevalent. You've got people faking slabs now, and that's always been around, but it's just so prevalent now. You've got people even faking, cards that would never be faked in the past. Yet they're doing it because people are lapping this sort of stuff up. They're paying the money for it, and then getting caught out, getting stuck with fake cards in your hand that they didn't know were fake, right? And I think this program on face value is really, really good. So I'm keen to see what eBay come out and say. They might even reply to the comment section down below, because when I've done these videos in the past, eBay have replied and have clarified things with regards to the program, because there was lots of confusion when this thing first came out. Lots of mixed information out there from content creators, so on and so forth. So they've come onto my page and put a few comments. So check out those videos, because you'll see their comments on those. Hopefully they can do the same with this one, because again, they're getting, in my opinion, like unnecessary hate for this, right? Like nobody knew that lots were included in the first place. So how can you hate on them for the lots not going through that process when they very clearly stated at the very start that lots didn't go through that process? And I know, like I said, there's issues with them, the way they've handled the cards once they've been set. They're rejecting cards that shouldn't be rejected, because very clearly a kink in the process where somebody sold a card, they've pack put it themselves and it's got rejected. They've had slabs get rejected from PSA. Like all this sort of stuff doesn't make sense. There's a lot to fix within this process, but if they can get it right, it's a really, really good thing for the hobby. So I'm keen to get your thoughts on this down in the comments below. Like I've said, probably 5 times in this video. So I'm just playing with a bit of paper. So yeah, like I said, share your thoughts and then we can chat through this down in the comments, because I always love to do that. I've seen a few people on social media. I know AIH Sports did a really good video on this as well, so please check that out. But a lot of people have been hating on this, misinformation out there. Like, okay, it sucks that lots don't get included, but I've just gave you a solution, eBay, on how you can, make that work moving forward. So I know it's a big thing to try and fix in the back end of your, platform, but that is the kind of thing you need to implement if you want to protect your customers. If you're doing this for the right intentions, you want to protect your customers, that's something you can implement, right? Put the onus back on the buyer to choose whether they want this applied to their lots or not, because then instances like that seller you're seeing on screen that I showed you a bit earlier, I'll pop up on the screen again now, they're the ones that we need to sort of get rid of off the platform, because they are very clearly trying to scam people. That approach I suggested could fix that. So, look into it. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.